Hello, and welcome to the Myth Within. I'm Dr. Tom, and I'm very grateful you joined me here today. Today I'm going to start with a citation that relates to the journey we undertake as fathers to raise our children to be comfortable and confident in the life they create. The quote is from author Clarence Boodington Kellen, and it reads, "My father didn't tell me how to live. He lived and let me watch. My father didn't tell me how to live. He lived and let me watch." As we begin to explore the mythical underpinnings of fatherhood, this quote really stands out. There's an element of living and bringing the next generation with you through that life. We are creators. We're formed in the image of the Creator, so the book of Genesis says. And when we look at and examine the idea of creation, this is an active stance. This is not a passive ideology. In order to create, work must be done, and this is really the ideology behind the myth of the work that Daedalus did with Icarus, and behind the story of Genesis, where God worked for 6 days and then on the seventh rested. And so, in our myth, Daedalus works on the wings to escape his prison. There's an act of creation present. He can't move to the lowlands through the land or the sea because that's already guarded by King Minos. However, he must move by air, which there must be flight to take that position within the tale. And so Daedalus works to create the means by which he could fly. Now, while it may have taken a couple millennia later to create the means by which humanity flew, the tale here really begins to warn of the ascent that's needed in order to escape the low places that we're at. It reminds me of the other quote that we explored not too long ago. "Shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you'll still be among stars." There's an ethereal flight that's occurring, and our consciousness takes us to this place. We have to fly in order to dream. Dreaming within itself is going into the ether. It's going out of the body. It's something that is there, that's outside of you, that you're aspiring towards. And in order to get there, you must take flight. But you must also have a solid grounding with where you're at, or you'll risk the possibility of flying too high to the sun, as Icarus has within this tale. And so, as Daedalus, the artist, was waving his wings, he found himself buoyed upwards and hung suspended, poising himself on the updraft of air. He next fitted wings on his son's arms and shoulder in the same manner, and taught him how to fly as a bird tempts her young ones from the lofty nest into the air. When all was prepared for flight, he said, "Icarus, my son, I charge you to keep at a moderate height, for if you fly too low, the dampness will clog your wings and plunge you into the ocean. And if you fly too high, the heat will melt them. Keep near me, and you will be safe." While he gave them these instructions and fitted the wings to his shoulder, the face of the father was wet with tears, and his hands trembled. As parents, it's our duty to create the environment by which our children can experiment. In the last segments, we've explored how the playful nature of Icarus, when it was not corrected by his father, created the means possibly by which there was an element of not listening to the warning given. Now, as we move within the myth, what ends up happening, we become aware that it's through our actions that we teach our children, not necessarily through our words. I'm sure you've heard of the saying, do as I say, not as I do. But how well does that work? How well does that create a means by which children can begin to work their environment in the manner needed to successfully navigate life? How do you define success? How do you define your values? Values form the basis from which success arises. And so for myself, my personal values are God, family, learning, travel, and hard work. These things integrate within one another. Now, while other individuals may have different value sets, it's imperative to take a look at these values as the means from which not only we personally develop our own form of self-realized consciousness, but also that we pass on the means, the groundwork from which our children can develop their own form of self-realized or behaviors, their own form of self-motivated behaviors that create the means from which self-esteem arises. How do you help raise the next generation? Raise them. Bring them up with you. Bring them up by example. In this part, we see that Daedalus, once again, he never calmed his sons playing around. And when everything becomes a joke, there isn't really room to take heed of the true dangers that are out there. Now, when a child doesn't take heed of the danger of the 16-wheel object moving at him at 35 miles per hour, the consequences are real. That's why it is our job as parents to instill a healthy dose of fear through this idea of moral commandment and prohibition common to the father archetype to help raise them into that being that they could aspire to become. I welcome your thoughts, and I want to thank you again for joining me here today. As we continue to explore the myth of Daedalus and Icarus, I hope that you're able to see ways that the importance of fatherhood manifests itself in the lessons we teach children. I'm very pleased to have two sons that I'm able to pass these values on to. And one thing that strikes out to me is really this need that we have to pass on what it is that we value most from lived action. As I said, I welcome your comments and I thank you for joining me. And until next time, my friends, I wish you namaste. And may peace and blessings find you as you advance confidently in the direction of your dreams. Goodbye.